Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up for you guys. Honestly, I forgot to count how many books I read in May. I think it's like 20, but again, over half of that number is volumes of manga. So, you know, it's how it is sometimes. But I can't wait to jump in and talk about all of the books that I got to this month. I found a few 5 stars. I just found some stuff that I really enjoyed, and I am super excited to sit down and chat about all of them with you guys. So let's get into it in just a second, because I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Book of the Month. If you guys don't know what Book of the Month is, they are a super popular and fast-growing online book service that helps readers like you and me discover new books that we could potentially love. I love Book of the Month because they definitely introduced me to new and emerging authors that I wouldn't have been aware of otherwise. Basically how it works is every month their team goes through hundreds of new and early release titles and then comes out with a curated selection of 5 to 7 that you can then choose from. I also love that they have a great skip policy, so if you're not really feeling any of the books for that month, you can just skip at no charge to you. And then obviously something we all love about Book of the Month is the price. They do indeed have the best price for new hardcover fiction, and you can actually get your first book from Book of the Month for just $9.99 using the code SPLASH. I do have 2 books from their June selection to quickly talk about, both of which I am super excited about. So first of all, we have The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This one, first of all, I did not choose it because of the cover, but it is stunning. In this book, you're following our main character Lucy, who when she was younger had this favorite book series called Clock Island, but one day the author of that series quit writing under mysterious circumstances. But like 20 years later, he re-emerges. He's written a new book, but this time he also is hosting a competition at his house with a very special prize for the winner. And obviously, our main character Lucy is one of those contestants. And just so many things about that intrigue me, so I'm really hoping that I can get to this one in June. And then next up, we do have a bit of a fantasy pick with Inkblood Sister Scribe by Amateurs. The blurb on this one really got me. It follows 2 estranged half-sisters who are guarding their family's library of magical books, and they have to work together to unravel the deadly secret at the heart of their collection. Like, are you kidding me? That sounds so good. Anything with like a magical library is like an automatic read for me, so I was super excited when I saw that this is one of the selections for this month. So if you guys want to check out Book of the Month, I will have a link to them in the description, and don't forget that you can use the code SPLASH to get your first book for just $9.99. So thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. And let's talk about all the books that I read this month. So first I'm going to go through the actual novels, and then I will talk about the manga last, because, you know, we already know what that is. But the first book I have here I finished last night, and that is A Slip Under the Microscope by H.G. Wells. This is one of the Penguin Little Black classics. I think it's adorable. I own like 5 of these, but this is the only one that I've read. But I sat down last night and I was like, you know what? I kind of want a short little book, and it sounded fun. And actually, I really enjoyed half of this. So there are 2 stories in this little collection. The first one is called A Door in the Wall, and it follows our main character as he's being told this like absolutely absurd story by his friend. And his friend is talking about how when he was younger, like 6 or so, he was just walking down, I don't know, a lane or something, and this white wall with a green door appeared, and he went into it, and it was like this very magical, whimsical garden kind of thing. He had the best time ever, and then he left. And this door keeps appearing to him at certain points in his life. He's like 40 now, and he's seen it a bunch of other times, but this door keeps appearing to him at very important moments in his life as he's on his way to like go get a scholarship that'll get him into college, go vote on a very important issue that's gonna like change the fate of his career or whatever. Like a lot of pivotal moments in his like adult career life, this door is presented to him, but he doesn't go into it because he can't mess up his career. And I just thought the themes that were being presented in this were really interesting, and the way that they were presented I also just really enjoyed, because it talks a lot about like childhood innocence and what it really means to let go of your youth, and like what this door in this garden represent to this guy. And I just thought it was so good. And I feel like that's another, I've talked about this in a vlog recently I think, but that's like another example of like fantastical elements in a story allowing authors to convey what they're trying to like tell readers in a deeper and more meaningful way. And I thought that was really interesting because this story was written in like the early 1900s, and I was like, wow, an early example of it as well. I love to see it. I really enjoyed A Door in the Wall. However, the second story in this bind up is called A Slip Under the Microscope, and it's literally just about this dude cheating on his, I don't know, botany exam. And I was like, I don't care. I really did not enjoy A Slip Under the Microscope. It did not do anything for me. But I really liked the first story in this, and I would recommend it if you wanted to check out something short by H.G. Wells. It's like 27 pages, and like, it's probably not even that long because these are like small pages. So I really enjoyed this, but I've talked about it way too much, so we're gonna move on. The next book that I have to talk about is somewhat of a disappointment, and that is An Unexpected Peril by Deanna Raybourn. This is the 6th book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I gave this book a 3 stars. I honestly just like did not care for this one as much. I feel like a lot of the elements that I love in this series weren't like super prevalent in this one, and it just did not really capture my attention. There were definitely some moments that I really enjoyed. Oh yeah, there's like a really good scene around like page 177. I have a little tab for it, but aside from that, I just didn't care. I thought conceptually this book would be really fun because you're following Veronica, who's the main character, as she has to kind of be this stand-in for a princess who is missing, and that kind of stuff like I do enjoy, but I just don't think that the execution, it just wasn't something that I loved. And I think that's a pretty common opinion of this book. Of the people who I know that read this series, I think they all kind of agree that this one is, you know, not the best. But I have started reading the 7th one, which is An Impossible Imposter, and it is so good. So my faith has been restored in this series. This one just wasn't it. And like, that's okay. This next book that I have to talk about is one of my 5 stars for the month, and I just love this book so much, and that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I had a pretty decent idea that I would really enjoy this book, so to have that confirmed was just really gratifying. Basically in this book you're following our main character Mika, who is a witch in a world where, like, you know, people don't know about magic, but she posts videos online pretending to be a witch, even though she is a witch, but people are just assuming that she's pretending to be a witch. But one day this guy who knows about magic messages her, and he's like, hey, I know you're not faking, will you please come to my house and tutor these 3 young witches that live with me because their magic is kind of getting out of control. And at first she's like, I don't know, maybe, and then she goes there and she's like, okay, I have to do this. And honestly, the relationship that forms between Mika and these 3 little witches is the most like precious and wholesome thing I've ever witnessed. I just think it's so cute. And there's also like a bit of a romance in here with a grumpy librarian. I really enjoyed that as well. And just like the found family aspects to this book were stunning and just so heartwarming. So if you guys want like a really fun, witchy, cozy fantasy, romance kind of situation, I would absolutely recommend picking up this book because it was so much fun. So 5 stars for this book. I loved it. Okay, the next book that I have to talk about is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, and I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I thought this was super fun. This story is based off of Korean mythology, and in this book you are following our main character Mi Young, who is a gumiho, who is a 9-tailed fox. And as a gumiho, she does have to absorb the life force of humans to live, but she doesn't necessarily want to live that way, so she decides to only absorb the life force of men who have committed terrible crimes, and I think that is a great concept. And then one day she ends up saving the life of our other main character Ji-hoon, and he's kind of like, what just happened? Until the next day she shows up at his school. So obviously drama ensues. He's like, what are you? She's like, leave me alone. He won't leave her alone. Honestly, Ji-hoon is kind of like, if he was doing this to me, I would be annoyed, but I feel like it kind of works with their dynamic, and I feel like he has to be persistent in order to like get closer to her. So I found it kind of endearing. Like, I just really liked their relationship and the romance that ended up developing out of that. I also loved the like urban fantasy vibes of this book because it does take place in Seoul, so you're kind of getting to see a lot of like current Korean culture, but then every now and then you do get a bit of information about like Korean mythology, and I thought it was a really good balance, and I just ended up really enjoying this book. So I don't know if I said this already, but I gave it a 4 stars. I really liked it. The next book that I have to talk about was the Wyverns and Words book club pick for May, and that was The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I ended up giving this book like a 2.75. I think it wasn't quite a 3 because there were just a lot of elements to this book that I didn't really enjoy, which makes me really sad because I went into this thinking I was really going to love it. I thought the concept was great, but I feel like maybe my expectations were too high. I don't know. But basically in this book, you're following our main character Leah, who is a runaway princess. 2 guys are going after her. One is the prince she was supposed to marry, one is an assassin who has to kill her, and you don't know which one is which. Like, throughout the entirety of the book, like, you don't know which one's the assassin and which one's the prince, which is a fun idea, but I didn't necessarily love the execution of that. So I just thought it was really slow and not a lot happened. It definitely felt like a good setup for a story, but I feel like it might be too much setup. Like 500 pages of what I kind of think is setup is a bit too long, and I feel like had this been condensed into like half a book and then more things added to the rest of it, it could have been really strong. But just not enough happened in this book to really capture my attention, and I'm very disappointed in that. There also weren't a ton of like fantasy elements in this one. I know that they do get more prevalent as the series progresses, but I don't think I'm gonna be continuing the series. So the next book that I want to talk about is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Sarpan. I did just read this book in my last reading vlog, so I'm not gonna spend like too much time talking about it, but I love this book and I gave it a 5 stars, which honestly I'm very surprised by because normally I don't read young adult contemporaries. I feel like for the most part, a lot of YA contemporaries probably won't be my thing, but I've heard so many people talk about this book, talk about how stunning the writing is, how the themes are explored, and I was very intrigued. And I just thought it was honestly everything everybody's been saying, and I really love this book. So basically this book follows a main character, Lee, whose mother just committed suicide, and she has started to see this big red bird show up everywhere and she thinks it's her mother. And there are definitely a lot of things in the story that do point to like maybe this is her mother, but she tries to tell people about it and obviously they aren't very receptive to that. So to kind of get away from everything for a while, she ends up going to Taiwan to stay with her mother's parents, who she's never met and she doesn't really know anything about them. But it's really lovely because you're getting to see Lee kind of connect with that side of her culture and get closer to her grandparents in the process. I also really enjoyed the magical realism elements in this book because, as I said before, she's kind of seeing her mother as this bird, and there's this whole thing with like her being able to see the memories of people, which I thought was really interesting as well. And taken at face value, it's really interesting and just kind of beautiful to see those magical realism elements come into play. But on a deeper level, you could kind of take it as a manifestation of her grief and how she's choosing to deal with things. So it's really sad, but it's also just really beautiful. And if you want to feel some emotions, I would definitely recommend reading this book. I didn't cry reading this book, but I definitely teared up a lot. It's a lot, but it's a really good pick. It definitely deals with some heavy topics, so if you're not in the mood for that, I don't think I'd recommend it, but if you are, I think it's definitely worth the read. And then the last like actual book that I have to talk about is Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. This is the second book in the Celestial Kingdom duology, and I ended up giving this book a 3 stars. I really did not love this book. I didn't like hate it or anything. It was a fine read, but I really enjoyed Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is the first book in this series, so I had high hopes. They just weren't met. I feel like Daughter of the Moon Goddess should have remained a standalone, honestly, because I think it would be a really strong standalone. It was also a really strong debut novel. I just feel like this wasn't really necessary. But again, I talked about this one in my vlog that I posted on Monday, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much because I'm just the disappointment. It hurts, but it's fine. So those are all of the books that I read this month. Now let's quickly talk about the 13 volumes of manga that I read this month. Yes, they are all volumes of Yona of the Dawn. Nobody's surprised. However, I will not spend much time talking about these because I know you're probably all sick of hearing me talk about it at this point. But I read I read more than are here because I read some, man, there's more than 13. Actually, I lied. I read 16 volumes of Yona of the Dawn, not 13. So, it just keeps getting worse, you know? But I made it my mission to almost completely finish the series. I have 2 volumes left that I have not read because I haven't read volumes 7 or 8 yet, but I'm gonna read those in June. And then I will have officially read every single volume. They were all great. Honestly, actually, that's a lie. There were some volumes towards the end that I really did not like. The only one I can remember off the top of my head that I don't like was volume 34, because the entirety of this volume focuses on well, she's not a random woman, but like just focuses on this woman's backstory for the entirety of the volume. And I was like, make it stop. I do not care. But the rest of them were great. Like after this volume, it started to get better, but I was so irritated by this volume. But the rest of them were stunning. Let me find volume 30. Volume 30 is great. I think 31 was pretty good too. Do I have volume 31? No, I do not own volume 31. That's everything. Those are all of the books that I read this month. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed sitting down and chatting with me about all of the books that I read in May. Don't forget, if you guys want to check out Book of the Month, I will have a link to their website in the description, and you can use the code SPLASH to get your first book for just $9.99. Also, don't forget to let me know in the comments what you guys read in May. Let me know what your favorite book is, or if you're feeling shady, I would also love to know your least favorite book. I love reading those comments. And now I'm gonna let you guys go. So I'll see you in my next video.